Sean Diddy Combs is in a New York hotel room, days away from being arrested. He's on the phone with his lawyer saying, "Let me get off the phone right now, and I'm going to let you guys figure it out." This isn't a music video. This isn't a bad boy documentary. This is episode 1 of The Reckoning. It all comes back to one theme: pain versus love. Welcome back to the AV to the 7th Power channel, where we talk about all things law, true crime, and a little bit of debauchery. Speaking of debauchery, I stayed up and watched this documentary the second it dropped. I was literally in bed watching episode 1 on my phone at 3 in the morning, typing notes, half asleep. Then I watched it again over lunch and filled in the rest. So this reaction comes from 2 places: the legal commentator in me who covers cases, lawsuits, and jury behavior, and the East Coast kid in me who grew up on Bad Boy, who remembers Pac and Biggie in real time, and now has to sit with what this series is saying about one of the most powerful men in our culture. I'm not going to break down every single frame. I'm going to walk you through the story episode 1 is really telling, because it's not just Diddy is bad. It's a story about how a lot of people's pain got turned into one man's power. And let me just say, the press on this has been pretty divided so far. Diddy's even spoken out on it on TMZ. Episode 1 does what all these docs do. It builds the myth. We start in Mount Vernon. Heavy D, young Puff dancing in the background, flashy, hungry, willing to do anything to be close to the music. We see 1989, Kirk Barrows. We see the early days of Uptown, Andre Harrell, Russell Simmons, the corporate rap era. We're putting suits on the block era. I'll be sure. Uptown in 1988, the fly light-skinned ninjas aesthetic. Then they introduced Janice, Diddy's mother, a woman, a social worker, trying to raise this boy in the middle of all of this loss and pressure. That's a moment where it feels like the doc is low-key saying, blame it on the mom. And I want to flag that, because anytime you see a black man's story being used to hold him accountable, the camera keeps swinging back to his mother. I start to ask, is this about the context, or are we quietly putting this on her too? From the beginning, the thread is clear. He's addicted to the proximity to power, and he will move however he has to move to get it. Before he was Diddy the mogul, he was Diddy the promoter, the kid throwing parties, overhyping events, overpromising that the night would be epic. They walk us into City College. And now I'm not even gonna hold you, that footage is hard to watch. You see the crowd, the stairwells, the panic. You hear bum rushing the door, and if you know anything about crowd control, you know those words are a warning sign by themselves. 9 people died. 9. Because according to the people in this documentary, an event got over-promoted, oversold, and under-controlled. And then you hear Diddy himself admit, in his own words, that his fame came from that tragedy, and that those deaths amplified his name. You can't separate the shine from the bodies under the stairs. As someone who watched Astroworld play out a few years ago, I couldn't help but make that comparison. Different era, different artists, similar pattern. When you hype something so hard that you lose control of the audience, the crowd becomes the victim, and the promoter walks away more famous. In this case, that was Puffy. We get deeper into Diddy's family. Melvin Combs, his father, the streets, the violence, the showing up to the funeral in a chinchilla or whatever it was. Janice again, the social worker mom who understood trauma for a living, raising a boy inside of it. But she also had many jobs: a school bus driver, working at one of the late night spots. We hear about a letter to the mom addressed from Joy's family, Joy's mom. We hear the allegation that Diddy actually slapped his mom. And if you follow the space, you've heard Gene Deal talk about that before, and I've reacted to that clip. But hearing it in the context of this doc after seeing her on camera hits different. Because now it's not just Diddy is controlling at work, it's the man may have been violent with the woman who carried him. The doc also plays with the idea of the paper gangster versus the street gangster. Diddy as someone who, because of his father's death, because of his proximity to real street guys, understood very early that if he controlled the paperwork and the image, he didn't have to pull the trigger to control the room. The pattern is pain turning into control, then that control turning into somebody else's pain. From there, Episode 1 starts building his genius. A&R, Jodeci, Mary J. Blige, the way he spotted, developed, and marketed talent is undeniable. He goes from intern to VP. And that's when another pattern shows up, using power to access women. We get EPMD, Eric Sermon being bought into the story, not just because of the music, but because Diddy wanted Misa. We see the same thing with Kim Porter later on when you line this up with what we know from Al B. Shore. This man is not just recruiting artists at this point. He's recruiting people's partners. By the way, I did not know Al B. Shore was from Boston. I learned that in this documentary. That was a whole history lesson, and that's my thing. Like, sometimes you learn more by looking at the past. We heard about Justin being born, and Kirk Barrows knowing, or at least hearing, that Diddy was beating on his child's mother. So while the industry is seeing him as the young genius in a suit, the people closest to him are seeing someone who uses control and violence in his personal life. Again, pain on one side, love language and gifts on the other. Pain versus love. Then we get to the part the culture knows best. Bad Boy. Biggie's song playing. Gimme the Loot, shaking up rooms. Firstly, I couldn't believe that Gimme the Loot was a song. Out of all of the Biggie songs, Gimme the Loot was the one? So that was also enlightening. Now, here's the next part. This was going back to Kirk Barrows talking about the split of Bad Boy as it was incorporated. He did also say that it was an LLC. 75% was split between the mother and 25% went to Kirk, with an advance going to Diddy. Why would the man who helped build this, who bought the structure and strategy, only be worth a quarter? That number echoes so many exploitation stories in the music business, in the music industry, specifically when it comes to hip hop. The artist gets crumbs, the suits get rich, except here Puffy is both. He's the artist adjacent creative and the suit. He's the paper gangster in real time, making sure the paperwork keeps him on top. Juicy drops in 1994. Biggie has a slow start, but once it connects, it connects. Big Papa becomes the I Get Around of that time, a song that lives everywhere. By this point in the episode, you're watching a man who has mastered converting everybody else's talent into power. And the people we met at the beginning, like Kirk, are already starting to fall off of the ladder. Then the doc starts threading in Tupac. I Get Around is treated like the viral moment of that era. Like a TikTok hit before there was TikTok. Like a Vine hit before there was Vine. Like a reel hit before there were reels. Big Papa does the same thing for Biggie and Bad Boy. And what episode 1 does well to remind us is that before the beef, Pac and Biggie were actually cool. They were friends. They were literally in rooms together. Here's where the jealous seed gets planted. You see Puff watching that bond, seeing this artist build real chemistry with another man who is not under his label. Puff was fascinated with the West Coast. He liked the danger, the edge, the aesthetic. But he was also threatened by Puff, not just as a rapper, as a man who could take Biggie's loyalty and pull it in another direction. As someone who has done a deep dive into the Keefe D arrest and the whole Tupac case, this section made my ears perk up. Because when they showed Diddy being asked if he had anything to do with Pac's death, I mean, that looked like a bold-faced lie. You can call it body language, you can call it intuition, but the answer didn't sit right. And you're gonna see that throughout this documentary. And that's why I'm telling you now. Tomorrow's episode 2 breakdown is going to be a must-watch. It has to be. Because with everything happening with Tupac and Biggie, and because you understand how the jealous seed was planted in episode 1, everything that happens around Pac's death and Biggie's murder starts to look very, very different. Before we wrap, I want to talk about the people they chose to put on camera. Kalina Harper was in there. Aubrey O'Day, we'll hear about that later in later episodes. Eric Sermon, an OG in this space. Albie Shore, fathered one of Kim's children. Roger Bonds, talked about all the time. Capricorn Clark, a former assistant. Mark Curry, who has been there from the jump. These aren't random names. These are people who are close enough to see behind the curtain at different levels. Artists, security, we didn't see Gene Dale in this one. Executives, even a juror. When you listen to them side by side, a pattern shows up. At first, they are in love with the opportunity. Then the control starts. And by the time they sit in that interview chair, most of them are still carrying some level of pain. So no, episode 1 is not a trial. There's no cross-examination. You'd have to work really hard in bad faith to watch all those people and say, they made this all up. The pattern is the point. So here's where I land on episode 1. I have to give props to the director and yes, even to 50 Cent as an executive producer for not making it overtly petty. This could have easily turned into a 4-hour subtweeted diss track. It didn't. The tone is closer to CNN from 2024, true crime, than 50 Cent trolling on Instagram. The same industry that looked away while he built an empire off of everyone else's pain is now cashing in on tearing him down. But those two things can be true at the same time. The machine can be dirty, and some of these allegations can be absolutely real. Episode 1 doesn't convict him. It cracks the image. It takes a glossy poster off of the wall and forces you to look at the blood stains in the corner. It sets up a story about a man who used pain and love as tools. All right, that's my reaction to episode 1 of The Reckoning. I know it's very different from my traditional legal content, but I did want to at least give you guys some overall thoughts, and these are based off of data from what people are saying today. I want you to tell me 3 things in the comment section. 1, what moment in this documentary hit you the hardest? Was it City College, Joy's story, the allegation that he slapped his mother, the Tupac and Biggie sections? 2, what did the documentary do well in the first episode? Was it the structure, the interviews, the way they used footage? And 3, what are you side-eyeing? Is it 50's involvement, the way the mother is framed, the true crime packaging, something that felt off to you? In episode 2, we're going deeper into the jealous seed Diddy had between Pac and Biggie, the street side and the paperwork side. And I'm bringing in my KVD research so we're not just reacting to the doc. We're putting this into context of what actually went down. Thank you guys for watching. Stay safe out there. See you in the next one. Bye.